Hello, this is my Brave family. I'm Jennifer Marshall, Executive Director of This Is My Brave. Thank you so much for joining us for this week's special episode of BraveTV. The main concept of BraveTV is to bring stories of hope to the homes of our audience during the COVID pandemic. Each week, we will cover different topics that our own Brave alumni can lead their expertise on. And this gives our alumni a chance to share their stories on another platform, talk about their journey with This Is My Brave, and offer support and resources to viewers who may be having similar struggles, especially during such a high-stress time. This week, we are honored to have with us a special guest, Dr. Rufus Tony Spann of Henry Health, a culturally intentional behavioral health provider offering telehealth services and digital community to help people thrive. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Spann.
Thank you so much for having me. It's actually a pleasure to be a part of a community of people that come together and make change the way that you do. So I'm actually more elated to actually be here than maybe you guys are to have me. So thank you for having me on.
We are so honored. Well, so this month is actually Minority Mental Health Month, and we're building partnerships with Black mental health organizations to help raise awareness, and especially for the disparities that are faced by the African American community in our country. Mental health issues disproportionately affect Black people in the US. And I wanted to kind of just read through these stats that may shock some people, but they're important to note. 16% of Black people in the US live with a diagnosable mental illness in a given year, and they're more than 20% more likely to report serious psychological distress as compared to the white population. Racial disparities, systemic injustice, and discrimination lead to increased mental health issues, including anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder. And Black people are less likely to receive mental health treatment. In 2011, Black Americans with depression were 20% less likely to receive treatment compared to white people. So these are important statistics to note. Mental health has, I think, historically been a subject that Black families shy away from talking about. So seeking help for our mental health is so important, and that's why we're so happy to share the incredible work of Henry Health. So let's dive right in. We have a lot to cover. So Dr. Spann, will you first start by giving us an introduction? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So, and thank you, Jennifer, for allowing me to have this moment. You know, sometimes as being a therapist, we're behind the scenes. And so it's nice to be at the front sometimes. And so, as said, Dr. Rufus Tony Spann, I am the Chief Clinical Officer for Henry Health. And I've been with Henry Health prior to the inception, meaning before there was a name, before there really was a concept. I met Kevin Dedner, who's the CEO, and also met Oliver Sims, who is the co-founder. And in meeting them, they had the idea of like, with everything going on and what's happening in our communities for African Americans, particularly for Black men, we wanted to do some shifting. And so I'll mention a lot about culture shifting because of the numbers that you just mentioned, Jennifer. They're numbers where it's like, well, how can I put some impact on that? How can I try to shift those numbers? And that's what came about with that conversation with Kevin and Oliver. We said, like, let's create something that allows for that. And so initially they brought the idea, I brought in the clinical component, and then we just created this entire team that looked at how can we start teletherapy and really shift that around the nation. And then also how do we add self-care support? And so self-care support is meditations, it's podcasts, it's journal writing. And we were saying, let's put it all into one app and have this vertical integration. And so then the name came about. And so for us, Henry Health comes from Sherman James, epidemiologist, African-American male, that did studies looking at hypertension within the Black community with African-Americans. And so for him, the study, he named it Henryism. And it came from the fable of John Henry, the still driving man that beat a still driving machine, but as a Black man lost his life doing so to show that he could keep up with a counterpart like a machine. So long story short, we were like, let's take Henryism, turn it from Henryism to Henry, and we created Henry Health because we want to show that with everything going on with the issues within public health, mental health, we want to shake that and actually change that. And we believe that we can do that through teletherapy, through self-care support, and changing how wellness is showing up in communities to actually change the disparities and the numbers that you just mentioned.
And it speaks to that whole, stereotype that men have to be strong and they can't show any weakness. And so it's so true to your name and to the foundation of Henry Health. So thank you for explaining how you guys got started.
No, I appreciate that. You know, a lot of times, you know, we don't really get into the nuances of like the study and the name, but it was very intentional on how we wanted to make this. And even at the core, as we have culture first and being culturally responsive, that's been our identity. So we haven't shifted from that, and we really want to stay true to that.
It's amazing. Well, so can you give us an overview of the services that Henry Health offers? You're based in the Washington, D.C. area, but can you walk us through maybe a new patient experience with Henry Health?
Yeah, sure. And so, you know, as we are right now, just kind of going through our first initial phase in the DC metro area. So that's where we're serving teletherapy at this time. So it would be Virginia, it would be DC, and then Maryland, because I know sometimes we'll say DMV, and some people are like, well, where is that? So, but at the same time, right now, we offer teletherapy. And with the teletherapy services that we provide group counseling, individual counseling, couples counseling, and a range of who we're working with. So that could be not just male, but we work with all genders, all races, all identities. And that's because of the training and the technique that we have behind our therapy, and how we train our therapists comes from a culturally based, research-based intervention and style. And so we train everybody for about several weeks, if we think about the totality of the training, for them to be able to get into the culture and the narrative of our clients. So when a client comes to our platform and they actually register, they get registered into the platform, and then we match them with a culturally responsive therapist. And so I mentioned the back end of the training, because by the time they're meeting that therapist, we're looking at what are some of the variables to make sure that this client is matched to a therapist that they want, based on the needs, based on their time, and then also based on maybe what their perspectives that they're bringing in. But that experience within that therapy session, when I say culturally responsive, that therapist is getting into this intersecting identities of that client. They're getting into the narrative of that client, and they're not just getting to the identified problem, but they're also making sure that client can show up whole. Because we don't want somebody to leave out their identity, because that may be the impacting factor on why they have that identified problem. That could be a queer identity. That could be being a Black female. That could be being a Latinx person. We really want to make sure that we're honing in on that, honoring that, and then putting that with the actual therapy practice. So that experience that we're hoping that when a new user comes on board, they're already seeing that this is a space where I'm welcomed, and also seeing that once they get into the therapy sessions, that that's happening. And we have quality assurance that we're putting in as measures to make sure that that's the case. Now, thinking about the self-care support, that's where the app will come in and bringing more features. But right now, what we do provide is curated content that looks in at parenting or co-parenting, that talks about staying well and wellness, or dealing with COVID during this time. So there's tons of free reading that's available. And then we do have Men Thrive, and I'll dive into that a little bit more. But even on that website, we have free meditations. You don't have to be a member or a part of us to do that. You can just go to Men Thrive. You'll hear my voice and the voices of other people. We have podcasts. So we have tons of different ways of connecting with the community. You don't need to have the app to do so, but we have this well-rounded experience that we're trying to give our clients, something different that I don't think is out there just yet.
I think it's sort of a new concept, this culturally appropriate therapy, and really for the client, it's them being able to come and be comfortable being their whole self and being understood. So I love that you have this detailed process of matching folks up with the right therapist, and it's what we need right now. So that's great.
Yeah, yeah.
So tell us about, so right now you're serving clients in the District of Columbia, Maryland, and Virginia, but do you have hopes to expand to other states?
Yeah, and great question. Yes. So particularly we thought about like, how do we, one, create these digital communities, meaning that we're starting with Black men, but that's our flagship, or like our start community, but we're going into different communities, including Latinx, including queer identities, including Black women. And so we're also thinking about, well, where are some states, where are some locations that we can do this? And so right now we're thinking our next location could be Georgia. And really having some partnerships down there, working with insurance paneling processes down there and therapists. And so our intention is to go nationwide, but being very strategic as we are a startup company, and making sure that, hey, we're setting roots in an area where we'll see some, I guess, some fruit from that. But I will say this, once the app is created and the content is curated, you don't have to be in that state to get on the app and participate with it. But if you're looking for therapy, we're going very strategically into particular states. So where we may be providing therapy next would be Georgia.
Mhm.
But once we launch the app will be nationwide or worldwide, so anybody could enjoy it.
That's what's so exciting about all the content you're curating that can be accessed anywhere, by users. So we'll talk more about that in just a moment. But I noticed on your site that you're doing something very special and very necessary, needed, and I'm so excited to talk about this. But you have COVID response therapy rates through September 1st. Can you
Mhm.
talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. As we know how everybody's being impacted by COVID, more directly and then some indirectly, just because it's our world that we're living in. And so as a response to that, as Henry Health is very responsive into what we're seeing, hearing, and we having to adjust to that, we decided, well, right now people need services and making sure that services are affordable, and even offering some other options in addition, and I'll talk about that. But how important it is for those that may be impacted by somebody that or a loved one that has COVID, or maybe they have COVID. Maybe they're isolating. They need to talk to a therapist. And in addition to that, and as we just think about all the little nuances, couples, intimate partner violence has risen because now we're in shelter in place, and some people are not used to being in place with their loved one, or with family issues. And so I bring up all these different nuances because when people are seeking help, we want to provide that. Now, I will say we typically try to get the insurance to be used. So
Mhm.
we'll say, do you have Blue Cross Blue Shield? We offer Medicare? We have a range
There's
of,
a lot of insurance
yeah, it's
plans.
a lot of insurances. And so, but if we don't, we know that it's still a challenge sometimes to come out of your pocket. So we may say, because of the reduced rate, maybe we can do biweekly sessions at the reduced rate. We're really trying to make sure that we're supporting the individual to get the support that they need. And if we're not able to do it, we're finding sources or resources to help them. Because that's important to us. We really want to help and help heal communities, particularly during COVID.
It's so
Uh,
great that you're
yeah.
making it accessible to so many. And you also mentioned, how did you call it? Care calls or?
Oh, yeah, yeah, and we call them wellness calls, and thank you for bringing that up. And it's even care call sounds very appropriate at the same because that's the intention. It's a lot of care behind it. And so Kevin Dedner, our CEO, was like, we need to do something that gets out into the communities. And what we decided is that, hey, we can do these calls. And so for anybody listening now, or if you have a loved one that you want to share this with, we are doing free wellness calls where you get on our website, you go to our banner, COVID-19 and coping and resources. You will find that we have free wellness calls. The whole intention behind the wellness calls is for you to spend 15 minutes, sometimes it can go a little over, where you're talking with a therapist, not about therapy per se, and it's not a consultation, but within the wellness call, we're talking about how's your wellness? What are things that you've done to support your wellness?
Mhm.
This is what real wellness really means. Let's talk about some techniques to help with your wellness. And on
Mhm.
a scale from 0 to 10, where would you say your wellness is at now? And how can we help to maintain that or support that? And then after that call, that's it. You can, hopefully you're continuing to thrive. You can recommend it to other people, but there's nothing else that you have as an obligation. You're not putting into any kind of campaign with us. We just want to provide that to the community.
Oh, it's such an amazing resource that you're offering. So thank you for that. We're going to link it in the comments as well.
Very nice.
And I should mention too, we're live chatting. So if you have a question for Dr. Spann, feel free to chime in the chat, and we will get to that as we can.
Very nice.
So Dr. Spann, can you talk about the Men Thrive initiative and how you all got connected with Jeff Johnson?
Oh, yes. And so as I've mentioned before, and I tell this to a lot of people, like Jeff Johnson has been the truth for us. And I say the truth in a figurative and literally. Like Jeff Johnson speaks the truth. Like he's going to tell you, that's not going to probably come off right. Or that sounds like it's going to resonate. And you need somebody like that on a team because sometimes the team can be too enmeshed. And so Kevin Dedner, through his network of people, he knows Jeff Johnson, had him come on, and he's been great. And I lead with him because he is the chief curator. And we're using that term lovingly because he is the one that's organizing and orchestrating Men Thrive.
Mm.
And if you go to the website, you will see him. He has been true to this from his inception of being on this earth and just doing what he does. You could tell it's him. And so Men Thrive, the whole entire community is about super serving Black men and really being true to getting down to the social determinants, the identities, the wellness of Black men and how we show up. And we want to show up whole, operate with joy, and live with power. And so on that website is, as I was mentioning, podcasts. We have it where we also have meditations, and we also have some information and resources. So this is for anybody. Anybody can go up there. If you want to listen to a meditation, the meditation is not just for a Black man, but if you have Black men in your life, please usher them there, because what Jeff is doing and how he has Instagram live feeds and how he's talking and how he's sharing, I think it's a moment to be unequivocally a Black man and be in a space where you feel that you're being appreciated. So that's what that community is all about.
I love what you built there. That's such a powerful resource. So,
Yeah.
And then I have to mention too, you have this incredible video, that promo on your Instagram that I just shared actually today, which is all about the vision for the future. What this moment we're in right now, you know, this rising, right? This awakening and this move towards change. It's such a beautifully done video that I hope gets shared far and wide. Henry Health's vision and how we're going to get there. So I have to just mention that while we're on the topic. So
thank you. Yeah, we really appreciate that. I agree, the video was well done, and I think it just sends a message of hope and sustainability to those that are looking for it. I'm glad that Kevin, he pushed for it, and we're going to try to continue to push it out into cyberspace. So thank you for being an accomplice in that.
And we will help continue to share it because it's a beautiful, beautiful message. So my last kind of topic that I wanted to cover with you was all about how COVID has impacted Henry Health. We talked a little bit about, the push for telehealth, but when COVID all hit, I mean, there were some big changes across the board in terms of telehealth. I mean, can you speak to that a little bit? I mean, because before there was like a lot of, I guess, paperwork and things that needed to happen in order for you to be able to talk to your therapist on a video call. I mean, was that something that was a big challenge for you guys to overcome, or were you already kind of in that space?
Thank you for asking that. So for us, at our inception, we already knew that teletherapy was the direction to go in, and that space wasn't crowded at first because you didn't have a lot of smaller private practices, and therapists were a little bit leery about using like telehealth or telemedicine or using virtual, any kind of format, just because, sometimes that connection with the client doesn't seem the same. However, due to COVID, as we know that, there's the social distancing and just being very precautious about being in certain spaces. Like it flooded what I consider like the market for us. And so at one point there was like these giants that you had in the space. And then you had us kind of coming in, like, I would say like David, and trying to shift and kind of make some culture shifting. But then it also opened up some new changes and some doors for us, as where one, therapists weren't really open to it, but also clients weren't really open to it. So it was like the brick and mortar was the thing to do. But now you have to think about, now we have this space where everybody's wanting to kind of convene in the virtual space. So the flexing, the ability to get into that space, it's a little bit more easier for people because of different platforms. And so we've seen a big uptick where maybe initially, without having some of these large changes that are going on in our world that are unfortunate, we've seen where people are more readily connecting to that space of cyberspace. So we've seen an uptick, which could have been also a very good thing for us, because now we're seeing that we can match particularly African Americans to therapists. And I will also say this, it's also opened doors, and I think this is kind of like that moment in that conversation where we talk about the insurance, and where at first it was a challenge for certain insurance companies to really reimburse for teletherapy or even feel like they wanted to. But I think with COVID having changed like the social interaction, social determinants, and how people still need health and wellness, they've been a lot more, I'll just say, laxed right now, and saying like, hey, we realize that, hey, this is probably the only way that we're going to get this done. And so we've been able to panel very quickly with a lot of the major payers, as well as Medicare and Medicaid in the DC metro area. And that just helps us to get to more people to tap into their insurance. So that has also been a game changer and a shift for us. And we're very happy that that's happened.
I'm so happy that the insurance companies were able to move swiftly to get care to people who need it. And, it's not easy to navigate the health system, but, being able to connect to platforms that are, technically just, useful. I mean, this technology, we're so grateful that we have it, that we get to, be able to meet you, and you and I are going to meet up sometime in person, definitely, once we're past all this COVID. But so tell us about what the future of Henry Health looks like, Dr. Spann. I know, definitely you're looking to grow into other culturally diverse areas. You have a Building for the Future survey on your site that we encourage everyone to go take to help guide you. But tell us about a little more about the app and the timing of when you see it launching, and what your future looks like.
So great question. And because I love being future oriented in the sense where I'm staying positive, I'm looking forward to something and still being present in the space. And so being able to do so gives me a lot of hope for change and being able to do, as I mentioned, culture shifting. And so for the app, we're looking at the fall timeframe. And so it's been a work in progress. And there's been some delayed starts, and I'll tell you why. It's because we want to stay true to this. We want to stay true to what we're doing. And we looked at some of the nuances and some of the things that we were doing. We're like, does that really super serve a community? Does that really get the right curated content out to the community? So we've kind of pulled back, but the fall is the anticipated launch date. And I think with revamping, staying true to who we are as a core, the product is going to come out in a way that it's going to be revolutionary. And it's going to be revolutionary because as we talk about culture first and making sure that we honor the people that we're working with, we've got a lot of feedback. And so, for an example, right now we're still in a beta phase. And so we're working with several groups of men as well as diverse populations to make sure that we're getting feedback and saying, you know what, I like this, or user-wise, that doesn't jive with me. And so that's important for us. And so as we're thinking about a fall date, the app itself will have what we call native therapy. It means that just like if you go into any other app that provides therapy, you'll be able to go in there and see your therapist real time, interact, first starting off with talk therapy, then looking at text therapy, and making sure that each moment is still culturally relevant and intentional. In addition, as we continue to roll out some phases, as we talk about the app, we'll have a lot of that integrated vertical integration where it will be the podcasts, it will be the meditations. And as we continue to have our content director, Michelle B, work on that, you'll get a lot of great flavor in that. So my expectation of having that app is going to be, again, really good for the community and the nation, even if it just stands as a symbol of saying we're here and somebody's trying to do it differently than what everybody else has been doing. And so just to mention, like, what is the future for Henry Health? I think the future is very bright. I think we're in a space where, as I mentioned, the David and Goliath, and I mention that not to say that like, there's this giant that's looming, but saying that we're stepping into a space where we're starting off where our identity and what we're trying to do is culture shifting may be small and not known to everybody, but we plan on trying to get into a space that is somewhat crowded now. As I said, like everybody's moved to teletherapy, but the way that we're doing it is what it's going to be mighty and powerful. And so our intentions is to think about how do we do integrative health. So looking at bringing in psychiatrists, maybe even having some brick and mortars in key locations where we're creating this integrative health that also deals with physical wellness and not just the mental wellness. Looking at taking the app, as I said, nationwide and global. Making sure that we talk about other communities as the Latinx community, the queer community, making sure that we're super serving them and actually getting their feedback, getting people from those communities to be our leaders and our chief curators, making sure that we're not doing anything to dishonor those communities, but making sure we're giving the lived experiences the chance to be showcased in a way that allows for more of that community to be a part of that. Because as you mentioned before, Jennifer, we have these numbers, and the numbers are either high where they don't need to be high, and they're low where they don't need to be low. And we want to be a disruptor when it comes to that. We want to disrupt research. We want to disrupt how clinically we're showing up. We want to disrupt how where products are being posed to our communities. We want to have it where you enjoy products that truly speak to you and honor you. And that's where Henry Health wants to be a big part of that space and disrupting a lot of that.
Well, I see you guys as a leader in this space. I mean, what you're doing is you're doing it with such intention and such strategy. I see you guys taking off, and you're already taking off. So we want to help promote all that you're doing. Well, I thought I would also mention too that here at This Is My Brave, and we'd love your help getting the word out about two initiatives. We have our National Teen Storyteller event that we're bringing to the Washington, D.C. area in early 2021. And we're seeking highly talented teens in the area of poetry or music or essay or even comedy or dance. And so we have that announcement. I want to send you some info on that in case you can share with your network. And we also are announcing our partnership with Dr. Tanisha Freeman Foster and Dr. Kaya Connor out of the Tampa area, who will be leading our new This Is My Brave Stories from the Black Community initiative, which will be a show featuring all stories from the Black and African American community. And so we're looking for storytellers. So there'll be a form on our website. We'd love for you to help share that as well. Well, thank you, Dr. Spann. It has been fabulous learning all about the incredible work of Henry Health. And I thank you so much for your time and being with us today. Is there one last piece of advice that you have as just personally coming from you, how you've been able to manage through this whole COVID time period?
Yeah, and thank you for asking that. It's a moment where I can share what my mom would say to me. And, she would say, hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. And as a little kid, I was like, I don't know what that means. But now that I'm an adult and I actually realize how this world is and that things shift all the time, things are popping up that have been a part of our earth that we just didn't know was there. And now it's a part of our daily lived experiences. And so what she meant by hope for the best is that you have to stay positive, staying grateful. And that could be a challenge when everything in front of you is adversity, or it's a reminder that we're dealing with challenges, but still being in a place of hope, faith. It helps ground me, and it helps me to know that maybe tomorrow, but what I do is I'll just deal with what I have today, right? And so then preparing means like I just be a prepared mind, a prepared body. So I make sure I take care of my health and wellness. That's a way of being prepared. I take care of my finances, or I take care of my family, and I'm prepared that if something comes up, that although I may not have everything under my belt to deal with it, I've at least tried to put a level of preparation. That helps to reduce my anxiety, it helps to reduce my stress, and it helps me to be grounded in today. Because if I've done what I can to do prepare, if I keep hope and I have faith, then that's all I got. That's all I can do. And I stay grounded, and I stay happy, and I stay positive, and I stay grateful. And that's helped with my well-being. And so that's my message to all, from what my mom would say to me to I say to you, continue to hope for the best. But as we prepare for whatever comes for us, let's stay prepared.
I love that beautiful message from your mom. Thank you so much for sharing that, Dr. Spann.
Welcome. No worries.
It's been such a pleasure. And I have to tell everyone, thank you so much for joining us for this special episode of BraveTV. And tune in this Saturday. We have our conversation with Dr. Nicole Kamak and Dr. Danielle Busby from Black Mental Wellness. So we're excited to share this new conversation with you. So thank you again for joining us. This has been another episode of BraveTV. Thank you, Dr. Spann.
You're welcome. Thank you.